The Radio Forest Podcast.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm alive.
That's great, man. I'm currently reading a book called Limelight, Rush in the 80s. It's got me thinking about you guys. What was it like touring with Rush?
That was probably the most mind-blowing tour we ever did. I mean, the fact that those guys had asked us to come out and open for them. I grew up listening to Rush. I had an older brother that was a huge Rush fan. So I at a very early age was influenced and inspired by their musical prowess and talent. So for me to, 20 years later, be on tour at the age of, 24 years old, touring with Rush, I mean, was just mind bending. They were so talented and the loveliest of human beings, we had just wrapped up a tour of Living Color, which was another, series of really brilliant musicians as well and great talent. So it felt like maybe we were just doing something, incredibly right at the time, but not realizing that these bands were asking us to go on the road with them because they liked us, which was a strange thing.
That's great. What did you pick up then as far as opening for bands like that? Because Rush kind of has a style of, we sort of care what the fans like, but mostly we do what we do. And if the fans come along, that's great. Because you guys also did a pretty big tour, I think like 94 with Metallica. They sort of have the same thing. They've got radio play now, but as a rock fan, radio didn't touch Metallica until the Black Album, really. So did you learn a lot from those two bands like that? Like just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that was really kind of with both bands, there were conversations, about your career moves and things that you do and the importance of your audience. But the importance of the audience in the sense that play what you want to play, how you want to play it. Don't let your audience dictate to you what your show's supposed to be. And I think that you can use that in pretty much everything in life, do your job well, respect what it is that your craft is, your art, whatever that thing is that you're doing, do it your way. But at the same time, you do have to provide a little bit of entertainment to the people that are paying to see you. So there's going to be occasional moments where you're going to have to give them what they want. But ultimately, we learned the same thing from Aerosmith. We were able to tour with them in '98, and it was the same conversations. It's like, just continue to play your music, do your thing, make the records you want to make, and your audience will follow you. And here we are 30 years later, and we still have an audience. So I guess they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, you're on your way to the airport right now to fly to gigs out here in Boise. So yeah, you're still doing it. That's got to count for something.
For something.
So give me maybe a little insight. Was there any backstage hangs or advice or just kind of jamming with either Rush, Metallica, or Aerosmith? Or did they keep a tight ship and you didn't really see them that much?
No, there was a lot of, back then there was a lot of backstage hang. There was a lot, obviously before Neil Peart's, the tragedies in his life with his wife and his daughter. And so he was very much he actually helped us create our set list. We were in Austin and it was like the fourth show into the tour with them. And he came to our dressing room and was like, hey, listen, I've been watching you guys the past couple of nights and I was just thinking maybe this would work as a better set list for you because I really love that you're opening in 6. And we're like, what is happening to us right now? And so that was a pretty special moment for a band, of 24-year-old kids to have the greatest drummer of all times come to you and tell you that he's been watching your set and he likes what you're doing. The same with, Metallica. Those guys were really generous with their time. There were a lot of, hanging backstage after the shows, having drinks and talking about, the day's events or whatever. I mean, I think with them, they found it funny that, the name Candlebox in between Suicidal Tendencies and Metallica just sounded wrong. And so there was a lot of laughter about how are you guys even doing this? Like I got my head split open in Albuquerque because somebody threw a fifth of Jack Daniels at me and, all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of that, like, you can't believe you guys are doing this tour sort of thing. But yes, a lot of, and a lot of just really good advice, staying focused, do your thing. Don't let this deter you, and that's something as a young artist, not everybody gets, certainly not from the masters of rock and roll. And And the only thing I learned from Steven Tyler is you don't cover Aerosmith when you're out with Aerosmith.
Oh, you guys opened up with you played a song in front of them?
No, we were never allowed a sound check, and then the one show we were allowed a sound check was New Year's Eve in Boston, and because they said, "Oh, the band's not coming in, so you guys can actually do a sound check." We're like, "Oh, that'd be awesome, thank you." And we did "Lick and a Promise," and apparently Steven had showed up while we were playing it, and as I was walking back to the dressing room, he was like, "Hey man, how you doing with your bad self?" And I was like, "I'm good, man. I'm excited. It's New Year's Eve." And he's like, "Don't even think about it." I was like, "What? Think about what?" He's like, "Nobody plays Aerosmith but Aerosmith."
No way.
And I was like, "Okay."
But it's coming from
we won't do it.
Yeah, it's coming from Steven Tyler though. You take it personally, you just go, "Yeah, it's Steven Tyler. Sure, man, whatever you say."
Yeah, no, I took it personally. I hated him for a good 5 minutes.
Really?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh. Back to that Metallica tour then real quick. I think Alice in Chains was supposed to be opening for that, and then they drop off. Lane's kind of dealing with heroin at the time. You'd met him and all the Seattle guys. So did you know that was an issue when they're like, "We can't do this tour"? Were you already aware of what was happening?
No, we got a phone call from our manager saying that Alice had pulled out, and that Metallica wanted us. We didn't know at the time. Everybody knew that Lane was struggling with, his sobriety and his heroin addiction, but he had been clean. So I think everybody was excited for that tour to happen because we were supposed to be on it with them anyways. It was Suicidal, Candlebox, Alice in Chains, Metallica. So we were already on the bill. The shocking thing for us is that we were going to be direct support. That was a very, very strange emotion because we knew we had the melodic sensibility of rock and roll that Alice had, even though Alice is a metal band. There's a lot of melody in their songs. And so we felt like it would be good support with them on stage, and we would have a little bit of balance, and we would survive the show. So when we found out that we were going to be direct support, I think the four of us were like, we're going to die. And then the second thought was, God, I hope Lane's okay. So, it was a blessing and heartbreaking at the same time for us. But it ended up skyrocketing us to 4 million records sold, and it was one of the greatest tours we've ever done. So, but yeah, no, I mean, of course, we thought that it had something to do with Lane's heroin addiction, but nobody really knew what it was.
Yeah. You'd met Lane, early in your, I guess maybe prior to your Candlebox career in Seattle, along with the Cornell brothers, and you've got Peter Cornell on the new album, co-wrote a song with you. Now, if Chris wouldn't have become the Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, you probably still would have ended up working with Peter, right? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, at this time when you meet him, Peter's the musical guy, Chris is just kind of a drummer. So you knew Peter, and in theory, you still would. So you probably still would have ended up working together. Is that correct? Like, it's not the story of, "Oh, I should get Chris Cornell's brother." This is a different story. You already knew him, maybe prior to Chris. Is that accurate?
I met them around the same time. Peter's a little bit older, and he had been playing around Seattle a bit more than Chris, and Chris had just started Soundgarden as a drummer. They were a 3-piece. So I think Chris was always destined to be the bigger star, and that's not to take anything away from Pete. He was the younger brother that was 6 inches taller and a complete and utter rock god, where Peter was more of a singer-songwriter, which is what Chris became later on in his career, where he would sit down and play his acoustic shows. And that's a lot of what Pete was doing early on. So their approach towards music was so different. Yes, I would have ended up writing with Pete regardless, just because I've known him so long and I love his songwriting and his songwriting style. The crazy thing is they are so similar when they sing and when they play. I mean, it's eerie how much they sound alike, and their songwriting style is so crazy similar that it just feels like you're sitting with Chris, but it's Pete. It's just the craziest thing.
Is he singing on the song? I sort of can't tell, and don't take that the wrong way. I can't tell if it's the style of writing like you're talking about, and you're like, oh, I get it. I see what you're trying to do. And then you kind of hit those notes. Or is he kind of intertwined on that song? There's a couple of spots where I really can't tell who's in there.
No, that's just me. On the demo that he had sent me, we sat down, we talked about, we wanted to write a song that was kind of swampy and dirty, as though we were sitting at the crossroads with Robert Johnson about to make some bad decisions. So he sent me the track on his. Chris had left him his dobro, which is basically like a combination of an acoustic guitar that's made out of metal. And so they've got this really interesting twang to them. And he was kind of humming along with what he was playing me. So instantly I went towards what I would, the example that I use is Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, to make it a contemporary blues song. And that was fed by Peter's influence with that guitar part and a little bit of his humming. So he made it very, very easy for me to write that song. I mean, like literally was one of the easiest songs that I was ever able to write to, because he had given me so much within the track. But no, he's not singing on it. I asked him actually to sing on the record. And at the time he was still, reeling a little bit from the loss of his brother. And I think this was a very cathartic moment for him in writing. And I was just so happy that he shared that talent with me and was able to provide such a beautiful rock and roll song. And it was just so inspiring. And I love him to death. He's one of my closest friends. And yeah, I'm happy it's on the track, or it's on the album.
Well, that's just kudos to you then, because I can hear you kind of, it's maybe more like sustain a couple of words, and it feels like a Cornell, like you said. I'm like, it sounds kind of Cornellish with me not really knowing Peter's work. So I think that's just kudos to you to just changing some of the songs a little bit and trying different styles, which I think the new record has. There's some heavy songs. There's kind of a little bit of a twangy song, and you're really kind of stretching your voice. I know you guys did quite a bit of covers. Are those ever going to be released, or have they been released? I know you did like Loverboy and I think you did Buffalo Springfield and a couple others.
Yeah.
You did two of them, I think, through COVID, but didn't you guys record a handful of different covers?
We did, and we were getting around to releasing them, and management's like, listen, we're getting into licensing territory here. We're getting into mechanicals, which, in this industry as a musician, you make no money off of record sales. So if you release a cover song, you're still making no money, and you've put time and effort in, which cost you money to record those songs. So I don't know if they'll ever see a light of day. I mean, I hope they will. We did some pretty cool ones. We did Ventilator Blues by the Stones. What else did we do? I mean, there's so many great songs that we did. I would love to put them out. It really just kind of depends on whether or not if we just release them as YouTube videos, that's probably the easiest thing to do. The problem is we haven't shot videos for them yet. So we've only recorded the tracks. Yeah. So therein lies the problem. But I mean, they're pretty great. And we had so much fun doing the Loverboy one. I mean, I love that band since I was a kid. And I really just was so excited to sing that song. And I was so happy it came out the way it did. But we haven't played it live. So we've talked about it. It's, there's so much that goes on in a track like that. We don't have a keyboard player that plays with us on tour. We don't have a female backup singer like we did in the video, which is our guy, Memphis's wife, Brooke. So there's a lot of things that are keeping us from doing that. But maybe someday we'll release everything and just do a complete cover tour, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. I saw you guys got an acoustic show coming up in Hawaii. How did your recent acoustic tour go? Do you like those?
We do. We love the acoustic tours. They're super easy. Basically you walk in with a guitar and sit down and play. So it's a hell of a lot easier than setting up drum sets and amps and stuff for guitars. But it's really, it's more of a storyteller type of thing. We talk about the songs. We tell the story behind what the influence was, or we even talk about, a moment when we played the song and something happened where, maybe the band, Brian and I, were connected on something and we went into a different part of the song, or, we maybe screwed it up or changed something or threw a cover song in the middle. So it's really enjoyable for us. And I think it's enjoyable for the audience. Maybe it's not, but they always sell out. The acoustic tours that we do, they sell out really fast. So I think people like that, being able to sit down and just have an evening of music that's not blisteringly loud, if you will.
Has that always been something you've been into? And I'll try to explain what I'm getting at here. I know Kurt had said, with the Unplugged in New York, he was sort of planning for the future of like, I don't want to be screaming songs I wrote when I was 18 when I'm Mick Jagger's age. This is something that I could do and still be a musician and still entertain and still get that fuel for performance and writing songs and singing. And I've heard you say a couple of times, like, hey guys, 5 years I might be done, or 2 years I might be done. Have you thought about that maybe as I'm in the public eye and I age, acoustic is the way to go? Or have you just always been into that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like playing acoustically, but I also, I am retiring just because COVID, being home for 20 months with my wife and my son was a game changer for me.
How awesome was that, right?
It was. I had not been home to be a husband and a father like that since I met my wife and since I had my son. And I connected on a different level with them that I didn't expect to. And I know it's time for me to kind of put this away. I have a foundation that I do called Riptide Society, which will require to continue to play the acoustic shows to raise money for the foundation. But that will just be me, going out with a band at the age of 53, 54, 55, 56 years old, the way that we do it. We're not of the success of the Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam and all that stuff. We still travel with a very light crew and all 8 of us on a tour bus. And, it's not as glamorous as it used to be. And it's certainly a lot harder when you get older, physically and emotionally. There's a lot that goes with that. So when I started doing acoustic sets, I thought this will be an easy way for me to, like you were saying, ease into my, later golden years of rock and roll. But I don't sing them any differently. So,
you still have to do.
So I'm still the idiot that's screaming my lungs out. And so if I were changing that and not doing that, it'd be a different story. But I'm the idiot that wants to do them the way that they're done on the album. So
how's your voice holding up? Because there's I can't remember which song it is off the top of my head, but a new album, you're screaming the whole song in a good way. But I think in '94 with that Metallica tour, I think that's the first time they tuned down because James like, look, dude, my voice is not the same. We got to do something. I still want to sing, but I can't do, kill them all. Has your voice changed since your debut? It just has to, right? 30 years of doing it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually know how to sing now. When I started Candlebox, I was a drummer that got suckered into singing some demos that ended up, getting the band signed. So I'm the reluctant lead singer of Candlebox. But I've learned over the 30 years of touring how this thing works. My voice is actually stronger now than it's ever been, which is, I think, has a lot to do with that. I don't smoke cigarettes. I drink just straight whiskey, and I've learned how to build this muscle into something that's become very, very strong.
No Aerosmith covers.
Yeah, and we don't. We still do everything in standard tuning. There's no half step down or full step down. So and that may be, listen, I never did cocaine. I wasn't a big drug user like that. And that might have a lot to do with why my voice is in the shape it's in. Back then, James Hetfield was doing a lot of cocaine, and that is that can be a voice destroyer for a lot of people that don't realize how much that damages the vocal cords. So I took care of mine, I guess. I have had to cancel, I think, 3 shows in 30 years because of my voice, but that's not too bad.
No, I heard about a documentary like Far Behind, the Candlebox story. Is that still in the works? Is that coming out soon?
Yeah, that comes out, I think, in the spring of next year. A&E, I believe A&E bought it, and they want to air it. So I think it comes out like in the spring. Yeah, and we're really excited about that because a lot of people don't know the story behind Candlebox. They remember that first album. They remember Far Behind and You and maybe Cover Me, and then they lost track of us because we ended up making records we wanted to make, not records the label forced us to make. And with that, you lose those instant fans that love a song like Far Behind. But that's fine. I mean, we've still got gold records here and there, and we're still able to go out and tour and play to 1,500 to 5,000 people a night. And that's where we're at, and that's what the documentary covers. It really covers the beginning and the where are they nows of the band.
Yeah. I almost think it's like better not being in a band and not being a touring musician, but it's better to come out, have that massive debut, have a couple of cool songs that you can sort of ride on, and then you're like, great, we got it. Now let's do some albums that we want to do. But I forgot to ask you, what happened with that Flannel Nation tour? It was like you guys, Filter, Everclear, everybody ended up backing out. What was the problems? Was it just like scheduling? Was it money? Was it security? What happened?
Yeah, there was the show down here at Long Beach. Apparently it was like the promoter's first time doing a show. And I think that he had outpriced himself with tickets, or he didn't really know how to promote the show. And he wanted to change the venue at the last minute, and move us to like this brew house, which is in Long Beach, which that's for any band with an agent, that's a red flag that there's no money. And the problem with that is when you've got guys coming in from, you got bands coming in from Minneapolis, you've got bands coming in from Philadelphia, you've got bands coming in from Texas, bands coming in from Florida, that have to pay their crew and have to pay their their working members. Maybe they've got hired guns that are on salary. When you're going to be playing a show for free, you can't do it. And the majority of those bands, and we weren't the first ones to pull out, actually. I think Soul Asylum was the first band to pull out. You just can't take that risk. And, the promoter, I think, was planning on using the ticket money to pay the bands, and that's illegal in the world of touring. So it became a little bit too convoluted for any of us to be a part of, sadly, because we were looking forward to playing with all those bands. We know all those guys, been friends with Art and Richard for, going on 30 years now. And Dave Perner, I mean, it would have been a lot of fun. It just, sadly, the promoter didn't ask for the help that he needed from other promoters in Los Angeles or in California, that could have helped put on. It was a great festival. It was a great idea. It just, he didn't do it correctly, and it happens. And he lost a lot of money, sadly.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping someone else sees that, has the funds and the experience, and goes, you know what, let's do that again. And like you said, I think that's a great lineup. I don't want to keep you too long, and I don't want to spend too much time in the past, but you're such a rock fan. I wanted to ask you about some of your early experiences of seeing some of these just icons live. I'm sort of late to the Screaming Trees, and really just right before Mark had passed, I really started to get into them. What was it like seeing them back in the day, and what was Mark like? I mean, he's got a book out that's just, it's just mind-blowing, all the stuff I didn't know that was happening back. I mean, it's all prior to social media, but what was it like seeing them as with like small little clubs? Did you know something big was going on with all these bands?
Everybody did. I mean, you couldn't, it was unavoidable, man. I mean, the amount of musical genius that was happening in that city, in a period of 5 years. I moved there in '84, and every single week was blown away by another band. I mean, I'm doing a blog, I'm doing a podcast called Rock and Roll Look It Up, which is basically I'm documenting the early grunge movement of Seattle, which a lot of people don't know about. Bands like Bam Bam and Sissy and Loveco, where I'm going back to a lot of that early stuff that really inspired Soundgarden, inspired Screaming Trees. Mark Lanegan is really, in my opinion, was the godfather of all the Seattle bands, because he knew everybody and he had a connection with every single musical artist that was coming out at the time. He just kind of happened to put everybody together, or be in a room when it started to happen. And a lot of people don't know he was Kurt Cobain's best friend. He was a musical genius, and he had so many demons, man. That, like you said, that book, read.
Oh my God, I had no idea, man. It's another level.
Yeah, Sing Backwards and Weep. I mean,
it's
everything that guy put himself through. his own worst enemy, but he was brilliant live, man. I mean, seeing Mark Lanigan perform, as a 6'3" towering beast of a man with that crazy baritone bass voice, was so thrilling and moving and emotional and inspiring.
Yeah.
It just, all those bands were that way. But Mark was truly special. And for, the first time I saw Alice in Chains, they were rehearsing next to me in my old rehearsal space in the Music Bank. I was playing drums in this band that was very similar to like Roxy Music meets like Blow Monkeys. It was kind of this pop new wave. We had a saxophone player and a trumpet player and crap. And Alice in Chains took the big room next to ours, and I didn't know that Lane had brought Jerry in. So you all of a sudden you hear this guitar playing, and like, wait, that's not Alice in Chains. And it was, Jerry had come from Diamond Lie to join Alice.
Wow.
And it was magical, so it was something different. And that was what made it just so special, growing up in it and listening to it and being inspired by it.
Well, one more band I'll ask you about. What about seeing Mookie Blaylock?
Mookie Blaylock was, that was a surprise because everybody thought, what a crazy band name. But that first show at the Off Ramp was insanity. I mean, you knew what was going to happen. You just knew that Pearl Jam was going to become the biggest band in the world, whether we were Mookie Blaylock or Pearl Jam. I mean, it was so obvious. Just watching that show, and watching Dave Cruzen play drums and Jeff and Stone and Bruce. I mean, just there was so much cool stuff happening. And then, watching McCready just take over as lead player, it just was it was amazing. So many great stories. And the Off Ramp's a tiny club. I think it held like 400 people.
Oh, wow.
And to be in that audience watching that was pretty damn special.
Well, the new album Wolves is out now. I saw something of you guys in a studio. You got another album in the works? Just real quick, what's happening?
We're doing a song for a charity album.
Okay.
So there's a gala that we're playing in November, but we did happen to knock out 9 ideas. So we're not sure if we want to release another record, but we had some stuff in our wheelhouse that we wanted to get down on computer hard disk, if you will. So we did. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. We haven't visited it. So.
Well, Kevin's hopping on a plane right now. He's heading here to Idaho Saturday with the Glorious Sons at Expo Idaho. Hey, man, thanks for taking the time and hopping on the phone and answering all my questions. I really appreciate talking to you today.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right.